Welcome to Unleash the Potential. Today we're going to be talking to Lyle Fabian from Yellowknife. He's president of KatloTech Communications, and he's bridging the digital divide in the far north. And so welcome to the show. I really appreciate that you must be doing something right, bridging the digital divide, because we are having a Zoom call. So, but I know there's a lot of work to be done. So I'd like to ask you, how did you get started? And what drove you and put you on this mission?
Well, how I got started was, I've was originally working in the oil and gas industry, back in the early 2000s, and doing a small pipeline repair programs and building and doing watercourse crossings and learning how to do, all that kind of pipeline construction, small diameter pipes. And then so that year I decided to move back to my community because it was, the GWT and a few of the larger oil and gas proponents were aiming on building a new Mackenzie gas pipeline project. They had a huge aim to build this project. And I just decided to move north to look at that kind of opportunity and help my community get into the oil and gas industry opportunity. But I was working with the community for a while, for a long time, and realized that when I came back to the community that the internet at that time was, everybody had individual internet accounts for the First Nation. They didn't have the tools that I had when I was working in Calgary. They had no video conferencing capabilities, no wireless, no real broadband connectivity. It was just ADSL or dial-up. No email accounts, just basically whatever. If you had the incumbent internet package, yes, you will get an email, address attached to your internet account, but there was really no system in place for my community to help modernize, operations and management. So I just started to dabble with the community because I already had been working in the oil and gas industry, but as a hobby, just doing networking was always a very interesting concept for me, and just decided to help the community on building an internal network inside the administrative office, and that's how just dabbling started.
So I understand that you have some pretty big goals coming forward for the next few years. And perhaps you could talk to us about the growth of the project, where you're at, how important it is. Because a lot of people listening to this or watching it don't really understand, I believe, how big the chasm is for anything north of the 60th parallel. They think it just happens, it's there, but I know, and that the importance of it. So perhaps you could explain it.
Yeah, like I said, the community has always, my community has always struggled with connectivity. And so, with me looking at the issue, finding out, how to bridge that, those issues and the technologies to help, the community get on site. And so, in 2009, I decided that, the best way to really bridge that gap was, we needed an investment to kind of connect the community on a local Wi-Fi network. And so, we just decided that the local Wi-Fi network, should be funded by the federal government. So then I put a proposal together, which was signed off by Chief and Council, to help build a 1 kilometer wireless network. And at that time, that wireless network was, again, just simple radios from D-Link, which was and I still remember it was the D-Link AP 2700s, and the AP 2700s were like back then, top of the line, and they were robust, and had heaters inside, and so you can place them outside. And we had like these massive Yagi antennas, and we were pushing they said 54 megabytes a set, right? And I'm like, wow, that's huge. And so we were, by the time we shot the signal to the Judith Fabian group home, which is an elders group home, because we wanted to connect that office there with their own internet from our location, so then we can turn off internet accounts as we go along and just share it over a wireless network. And we were getting 23 megabytes per sec throughput, which was still significantly faster than the internet that we were getting at that time, which was 5 megs down and 25 megs up. And so for us to share the hop, skip, and jump the internet access to other locations on the reserve was a very innovative thing for us. And so it gave us the ability to not only share a local Wi-Fi network, but also reduce internet access and costs by shutting down these internet accounts, and then we share everything from the one location. And so the idea originally came from was a university campus network. You can walk around a university, you can have access over your cell phone, smartphone. Back then, everybody had access to the university's Wi-Fi network, and they still do today. But that was where a campus style network was basically where the concept I came up with was what came from. So instead of a campus-based network, how about a community-based network, wireless? And so we applied for a grant, and we were successful in gaining that grant. So over a 2-year period, we built this wireless network, and so it was just with that. We've helped bridge that digital divide with the community, and we just wanted to kind of steamroll. We were successful in the first project. We wanted to continue. What else can we learn about bridging community networks? We brought in video conferencing capabilities for the community, where we can because at the time, Chief and Council was spending a significant amount just to negotiate with the federal government of Canada on outstanding land claims issues. During that time, the federal government, the Harper government, was cutting back on these grants and funding. And so we decided that the best way to kind of mitigate that impact, what can we do with less, and how we can do more with less. And so we decided to use video conferencing capabilities, which was very innovative for the Indigenous affairs at that time, because for them, they had to send teams of people to negotiate these land claims issues in our community. And so we just said, what, we'll meet halfway wherever that is, which was most times Edmonton, Alberta, from Hay River. So it was just a 12-hour drive. I know some people think it's just, but we're remote. Like, we're really remote. In order for us to get to a location of a larger city, you have to drive 12 hours south. And that's how remote we are, because when you go from Hay River to the Alberta border, that is an hour and a half's drive, right? But as soon as you hit the border and then you go to another hour and a half, you hit the community high level. And the community high level, you had options of better broadband internet, and it's 3 hours away from our community. You get better broadband internet, better speeds. The pricing was almost, and I discovered, started to really look at this stuff. going from Hay River to High Level was a 3-hour drive. And the price significance in broadband internet access was almost 60% cheaper. 3 hours away, 60% cheaper.
I guess it must have had something to do with the resources in the ground.
That's correct. Huge resources in the ground. And that resource at that time was Alberta SuperNet. Alberta SuperNet, you know, and I started to really look at, you know, why is it cheaper in Alberta and nowhere else? And then I you know, reached out to a gentleman, you know, at that time, Murray Sigler, who was the president of Axia. And I emailed Murray and I said, hey, Murray, what is Alberta SuperNet and what is Axia? How does that work? And how did you guys make internet so cheap in Alberta, right? And I didn't think I was going to get a response. And Murray, you know, and during that time we had a meeting scheduled in Calgary for one of our negotiation sessions. And Murray, you know, as I was in Calgary, Murray emailed me back and said, let's go for lunch. Bring, you know, your council members and chief and council. And so I had all these questions about Alberta SuperNet, Axia. What does Axia do? How did you guys build the business model? And you know, and Murray was so gracious in regards to sharing his experience on how Alberta SuperNet works, why it works. You know, Alberta SuperNet is where the Alberta province has invested $200 million to connect all its key anchor institutions on a robust fiber network, connecting hospitals, education centers, libraries, in all their small towns and cities and so on and so forth. And so Alberta, you know, decided that, you know, we have this massive network, but we need to hand off this network to a management arm. And so that management arm was Axia Net Media. And so it was Axia Net Media and Murray Sigler and their team, you know, figured out a way to not only build a strong business model on a provincial owned network, but how to make that work. And it was that idea that they themselves opened up the Alberta province to competition by leasing a provincial owned network. They manage it. They don't own it. They manage it, and they lease that provincial owned network to providers. And so overnight, what happened is that, you know, you had maybe two providers in Alberta, early beginning of the late 90s and early 2000s. And then when Alberta SuperNet Axia came into play, they had overnight, I think what Murray said was 23 individual suppliers to provide wholesale broadband. And that concept always stuck with me. And it was just that really led me on this path to, you know, with Murray and his graciousness to share, you know, information with me. And ever since then, that was my goal, was to take a lot of it in, how fiber is constructed, why is it so, take out the mystery of it. And so that year in 2000, and I think it was 2011, we started our our wireless project 2009. 2 years later, I said, you know, hey, let's build our own fiber network. A 1 kilometer fiber network as a feasibility study in regards to how we can build an Alberta-like SuperNet in the Northwest Territory, because no one else was doing it, right? And we were granted the funding to build a 1 kilometer network, which gave us the ability to train, educate, hire a team to help us build and train us and educate us on how broadband networks are either hung or trenched. And so, you know, we hired this team that was willing to transport give us a lot of knowledge in regards to how to build these kind of networks. And so that's where the original idea came from, was for me to build an Alberta Super-like network, to create healthy competition in the South, in the United States, they're called open access networks or community-based broadband networks. You know, creating healthy competition, lowering broadband prices. And all I did was just do research and research, ask questions, and it just dawned on me that, you know, with Alberta likes internet, you know, why isn't it in Saskatchewan? Why isn't it in Alberta or in BC? Why isn't it in any other province? And Alberta is the only province that they themselves are situated on a network that is owned by all residents in Alberta, and yet they don't know that it's there.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got a big undertaking ahead of you, I know. And so just give us some idea of how big it is to connect all the Indigenous communities within your territory and then get access to the outside world.
The project, what we're looking at is a multi-phase project. We estimated that it's about a 1,200 kilometer fiber optic network. And if you check out the website at KatloTech.ca, and then you'll see a, you know, our projects, and under that project, you'll see a, you know, broadband investment in the Northwest Territories. And that's the idea, is that, you know, for us to do this kind of infrastructure would really help bridge that digital divide for Indigenous communities. You know, one of the key aspects of why we've been so successful in promoting what we've been promoting is that, you know, our project really helps with, you know, the education piece for distance learning. It can help with the health and education, not only health and education, but also digital innovation and technology and jobs. And that was always in my mind in regards to a new utility that is so simple and is so easy to look at in regards to community broadband ownership and design. You know, industry like you know, industry incumbents, you know, have always been saying, you know, even here in the Northwest Territories, that infrastructure ownership, the return on investment is just not there. It's too costly, too expensive. And then when we decided to build our own 1 kilometer network, and then additional following funding cycles later, you know, decided a 14 kilometer network. But we were shown that, you know, suppliers, designers, and I took all that stuff in and realized that, you know, a 1.3 initial 1.3, when we put out an RFP, you know, one of the incumbents came back and said, you know, to build this network for you, it's going to be $1.3 million. And we're like, $1.3 million. And I'm like, you know, what is it, made out of gold? Right. You know, and to help put in the electronics and modernization, and it needs to meet our incumbent specs and all this stuff. And then, you know, the company that we hired to help us really demystify the technology was just so simple. You know, Cisco switching, fiber optic components, fusion splicing, underground enclosures, and then putting the electronics on each side of that in order for you to, and it was just basically like taking a Cat5 or a Cat6 cable and plugging it into a switch and plugging it into another switch. Boom, you're done. And then you need other aspects such as firewalls, layer 2, layer 3 networking. You know, I just learned how to do the layer 1, which is the basic physical aspect of a network to really connect 2 locations over a robust network. And so it really demystified, you know, the $1.3 million, and then we constructed the infrastructure for almost 60% cheaper than their ask. And with that, you know, I just said, you know what, how about we connect not only our community, but how hard it would be for us to build community-based networks, little silos. One community here with their own network, one community here with their own network. And that's where the idea came from. Let's help communities build their networks, and we'll be the bridge in between building that interconnectivity to these community-owned networks. So then the more you do that, you know, you build that bridge, that digital divide for communities. And not only that, but you know, our community is situated by the town of Hay River, which is about 3,500 people. And all of a sudden, if you have a lot of First Nation communities, 9 times out of 10, a First Nation community is by and situated by another non-Indigenous community. And so I started to think about, you know, how our network can not only bridge the digital divide for Indigenous communities, but also bridge that digital divide to rural broadband non-Indigenous communities. It's a win-win for both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities to really look at what we're trying to achieve here. And so we've came up with a concept, a multi-phase build, and trying to bring redundancy where redundancy is almost non-existent. And so therefore, you know, non-Indigenous communities will benefit. Indigenous communities will benefit by owning the infrastructure, leasing that infrastructure to incumbents. And yet when those incumbents come in to lease that infrastructure for a fraction of the cost of if they had to do it themselves. Yep. And so therefore, the return on investment is almost instantaneous, rather than spending $1.3 million for a network. You know, for them to lease infrastructure from a community-based network, you know, is their return on investment is now, right? And so all of a sudden you're leasing your infrastructure to providers who want access and don't have the huge cash to come north. And that's the idea that we're doing, is we're doing a multi-phase build out to help bridge those digital divides, lease community broadband networks to incumbents who are willing to bring a service. And so that's the idea. And so I know we have a huge task ahead of us, but it's not a task that is insurmountable. Incumbents will say infrastructures are expensive. Yes, they are, but I've been proving to build networks almost 40 to 60% cheaper than any construction company out there, because we do everything in-house. We design, we build, we deploy. You know, we have direct relationships with suppliers, you know, and you know, we cut out the middleman. If you can cut out the middleman, you can help reduce the cost for First Nation builds. You can help reduce the cost for and demystifying the technology, because, you know, everybody talks about 3G, 4G, you know, the whole 5G thing nowadays. But really, if you do not have the backbone to bring those wireless technologies, you know, you'll always be operating on a closed-based network. And so that's what we're saying, is that what we're building is an open access network, not a closed-based network. It's a different business model, a different business idea, where, you know, you're leasing infrastructure to people who want to come north. We create healthy competition. We create choice. We create innovation, cloud-based services, technology, and innovation. You know, so can you imagine? And this is what I, you know, told, you know, some of the supporters, is that, can you imagine there's 663 First Nation community groups and Indigenous groups and Métis groups throughout Canada. 663 First Nation and Métis groups throughout Canada, and we connect all those communities together on a robust Indigenous-owned network. And then you add cloud-based technologies and data centers in those communities. 663 First Nation data centers, First Nation-owned data centers. You know, that's you know, that value in itself, you know, is a $1 trillion broadband initiative.
I think the benefit, though, outweighs that cost. immensely, because you're not even talking about, now you've got a network, now you can measure what you have as an asset. Like perhaps there's an Indigenous community that has a morel field where they can sell morels, and
That's right.
or perhaps they have fish that are migrating through their territory, and they can actually count the fish as they're spawning based on the data.
That's
I
right.
mean, truly, what you're doing is. So I'm a big supporter of community networks, because I believe the people who live there become the stakeholders, and they can remove roadblocks and make things cheaper. And they do. You are leaving something behind. I think that what you're doing is a model that we need to start to adopt, because obviously for the past 10, 15 years, the model that we have isn't working.
No.
And we cannot leave people behind. The access to the digital economy, it impacts everything we do. Mental health, education, health, just physical health,
Yep.
travel. And I think that I just wanted to say thank you very much, Lyle, for spending time with me. I know you're very, very busy. And is there any way that investors or people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just email me at info at katlotech.ca. So it's KATLOTECH.ca. So just info at katlotech.ca. And like I said, is that the digital divide is real. Community-based broadband networks or Indigenous-owned networks, will really help bridge that digital divide. And when I say it's a $1 trillion network, not in the cost, but also in the revenues that we can be potentially generating on an Indigenous-owned network, where we build a digital economy in Canada, house cloud-based services on First Nation communities. It's a win-win for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Right now, we don't have that capability, and so, but we want to build. The first step is phase one, and so therefore, phase one is easy. Phase two is easy. Phase three, it's just a matter of getting those backers to really see, the potential of a massive network, coast to coast. Connecting not only Indigenous communities but rural communities with cloud-based services. We're talking, a win-win for everybody. Win-win for Canadians, win-win for Indigenous communities, and and all in all, we're talking about, bringing groups of people together to work on a common goal, and that common goal also, really bridges not only the digital divide, but also reconciliation. And that's what we're seeing. We need to look at reconciliation. Our project really achieves reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups, and having businesses be part of what we're trying to do. Is that we're bridging a digital divide, but also we're healing relationships by sharing our culture, sharing our language, sharing our goals and aspirations to protect not only the environment also, but feed our families. Those are common goals for everybody.
Yeah.
And so therefore, those are the things that we share with fellow Canadians. Not only do we want to bring innovation and technology and create jobs and build businesses, but we also want to protect the environment and feed our families. Like, what person on this planet doesn't want to, have a healthy way of living, protect the environment, and feed their families? And at the same time, we're building strong relationships with what we're doing. And we believe that every single letter of support that we get for our project, we're saying that those individuals who are giving us letters of support are building and healing, and coming with reconciliation, because that's what we're also promoting. Is we want to share who we are as a people. We want to help contribute to our Canadian economy and to the world, because we have a lot to contribute. And yeah, and we just want to bridge that digital divide and bring innovation and technology.
Well, I just got to say, you have a supporter here, and I believe that access to the digital economy does help us all. And I really want to thank you again for being here today.
Yes, thank you.
And to the rest of you, I hope you've enjoyed our show today as we discussed with Lyle Fabian from KatloTech Communications. You truly are unleashing the potential of the digital divide and the uniqueness of Indigenous and networks in an area that has so much to offer and we don't even know yet. So hit subscribe if you want to see more shows like this, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel. I am always looking for great people to interview who are truly unleashing the potential. Please contact me at robbarlow@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.